Hi, and welcome to this webinar. Thanks for joining us. We're talking about something really important today, and we're glad that you're a part of it and can learn from it. As we all learn together on how to navigate the world right now, one of the areas that's getting a lot of our attention in our communities, wherever we live, is how can we support the organizations that do so much in our communities without the opportunity to gather together and do what we typically do in the fall and at many other times of the year, and that's have events and combine our individual power with our collective power in the community to raise money and support the organizations that are the most important to us. Well, a lot of bad news going on out there, but the good news is there are some things that we can do to help meet those needs in the community. And we have a couple of folks with us today who are very connected to all this. I'll introduce myself first. My name is Matt Friedman, and I co-own a strategic communications PR firm here in the Detroit area called Tanner Friedman. And in my spare time, such that it is, I serve on boards, and one of the boards I'm really happy to be involved with is the Children's Foundation, located in Detroit. And I've been chairing that board for about the last 6 years. And as a board chair, you learn a lot about how charities work and how nonprofits work and how communities come together around causes. So I appreciate the opportunity to moderate our discussion here today, to engage in some conversation that I hope everybody will benefit from. I want to introduce our panelists here today. First is the president and CEO of Planning Alternatives, a financial advisory firm in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, Nathan Mercero. Nathan, you've been thinking a lot about this, and look forward to hearing what you have to say today.
Thanks, Matt. Looking forward to our conversation.
Thanks. And we also have David King. David is the president of Variety, the children's charity of Detroit. And David, as a community leader and volunteer, look forward to hearing from you too.
I'm excited to have the conversation.
Great. So thanks. Let's start with Nathan first, because Nathan, I think there's a sense of urgency out there. People want to help. The event invitations aren't coming in the mail the way that they're used to at this time of the year. But if you start thinking now about how to help your favorite charities, you can even have an impact by the end of the year. Why don't we start there with what's most immediate?
We've all been impacted by the effects of COVID-19, and the government took significant action in late March to pass some tax laws that we want to make sure people are aware of. We've got 4 months left in the year, and these tax laws are going to be expiring, so taking advantage of those is very important. The first is awareness that there's something called a universal charitable deduction available, and that's a $300 per person contribution that's available to lower your taxable income, your adjusted gross income. And for people who recall all these tax law changes that took place specifically 2 or 3 years ago, there was a real shift in who could itemize deductions. And in fact, over 90% of Americans cannot itemize deductions now. So this $300 per person above the line deduction, called a universal deduction, is available for contributions to be made in 2020. And we encourage people to act on that. Secondly,
so just when you thought you couldn't deduct charitable contributions anymore, here comes something new. And now each of us has a decision to make if we choose on how we want to do that.
There's a lot of ways to give, whether it's time. Obviously, we focus on the financial planning aspect of helping our clients and corporations and endowments make sure they're optimizing their strategies around giving, but there is a time limitation. So we want to encourage people to act now. If you can't get to an event, that doesn't mean that you still can't give. And there's such tremendous need amongst a variety of charities and the workers. I also want to point out the importance of helping the people who are the support staff. And many times charities or donors focus on, well, what percent of my dollar goes to the actual benefactor, beneficiary, which is a very important question. But without the people doing the work, those dollars are not going to get distributed. So there's over 12 million workers in the nonprofit sector. It's the third largest group of industry workers in America, and we really need to be supporting our local charities now.
Well, that brings me to David King. And David, the programs that a charity like Variety runs still need to happen, even though we're in a pandemic. In some cases, they might need to happen more. So what's the need out there that you're seeing in the community?
Well, I think people want to get involved, and they do so initially and continually by attending special events, which are not happening. And with special events being postponed, there are still so many opportunities to still get involved. One way to get involved is to reach out to the charities to see how children's lives are still being met by those charities. The need is great, and perhaps even greater during these times with COVID. When you give a gift, it's directly changing a child's life. Instead of buying a ticket, you're buying a bike or feeding a child, and the direct relief is going to directly to the urgent needs of the children.
So that's what is known in charities is mission-directed giving, and it seems to be something that would help a charity like the one that you lead, if donors are able to write the check or otherwise contribute.
Right, especially since events aren't happening and we don't know when they're going to be happening anytime soon. People are looking for a way to give, and they can still do that directly through. I like to say, with our charity particularly, we were here pre-COVID, we were here with COVID, and we'll be here well after COVID.
Nathan, I talked about writing a check, but depending on your investments as a donor, you may not need to just write a check out of your checking account. There might be some other ways that you can contribute and still have the cash flow in your personal bank account to be able to cover your bills every month. You can help the charity and pay your bills at the same time. That's something you're talking to your clients about, isn't it?
There's a variety of ways to give, and we see a lot of benefit when people have stock, for example, if they want to give a direct gift to a charity. So you don't have to write a check out of your bank account necessarily, although that's always appreciated, but you can also give certain types of assets. Believe it or not, the stock market, as of yesterday, August 12th, the S&P 500 was up over 4% for the year. And technology companies were up over 20% for the year. And that's hard for a lot of people to understand, given all the wild gyrations we've had this year in the markets. But one of the strategies that you can employ is a direct gift of stock or an asset to a charity, and that charity can benefit. And I'll also mention that the change in tax law is increasing the deductibility to 100% of adjusted gross income for cash gifts. So we're incented to give cash, we're incented to give appreciated assets, because when you give appreciated assets, you avoid paying tax on the capital gains, you still get the value of the deduction. But on cash, there's actually been a very clear emphasis this year where individuals can give or deduct up to 100% of their adjusted gross income for charitable contributions. And corporations have had a change for 2020 where they can gift up to 25% of taxable income. And it used to be 10% of taxable income and get a deduction. So there's clear incentives in 2020 to act now. And it's important for us to have these conversations and get in front of this so that people can take advantage of what's here on the calendar before time passes.
Those are some real significant differences that could really make a difference for charities that have this need right now. And Nathan, one other thing I'd like to talk about before I have some questions for David about getting involved. The term planned giving has been around for a long time. Charities use it, donors hear it. Traditionally, it has to do with your estate and what might happen after you die, but it sounds like what you're talking about here are some really actionable things that can be done now during a lifetime to make a gift, to make a difference. How has that changed the conversation that you're having with clients?
Well, we're seeing that people are at the point where they want to do something, and it's a matter of how do we do it? How do we cross the bridge? And in crossing that bridge, making sure that their dollars are effectively being used for the charities that they're supporting, and also, where possible, having the best benefit personally with their finances in that step. So planned giving is a really important part of the strategy, not just this year, but beyond. And that looks at, well, what do I envision my legacy to be? Or what do I want to give on a regular, recurring basis to support charities? And there's such an evolving need that those needs may pivot quarter by quarter, year by year, day by day even. So things, using tools that are available through planned giving include things like charitable, trust, private foundations. Those are more complicated entity structures, but we're seeing a lot of movement toward what's called donor-advised funds, which
Yeah,
is,
I wanted you to explain what that means. That's something that gets bantered about in conversations like this. So what does that really mean?
it's a very simplified way to enact your giving, where an account is set up and the major custodial companies that hold assets will have these donor advised funds available. And you're making a gift into that fund. You're getting the deductibility of that gift. And there's a wide range of assets that you can gift, whether it's stock, whether it's Bitcoin, whether it's real estate, whether it's company, entity shares. So those go into this donor advised fund, and you get the tax benefit in the year that you provide that gift. But you have the discretion as to when that gift gets distributed and over what time period to whom. So it creates a lot more flexibility. And in the meantime, you could even have those dollars managed and accumulate and continue to grow in a tax-free environment and have the control. We really see this as a more convenient tool because it's easy to administer. It's a lot lower cost than some of the more complicated plan giving strategies that I mentioned.
Some really important options to consider. One is volunteering. And David, you've got a group of volunteers at Variety that's like a lot of charitable organizations all over Michigan, all around the country, very close knit, people who are really committed to the same cause. How did you get involved as a volunteer, and what's it meant for you, and what would you recommend to others who might want to explore that?
Geez, I got involved with Variety 25 years ago, simply stuffing bags at a charity event. Throughout the years with the different variety of things that they do, I've been kind of well versed into, helping out in all of them. I would say the volunteers are the backbone to any charity, and we really do have an amazing group of volunteers that, from the smallest things to handing out food to the Pontiac school districts to the Christmas programs or any of that stuff that you can do small. It's not just about writing a check, but for a lot of people who don't have a lot of money, it's about just showing up and doing as much as they can with their hands, with their time. So we've been very fortunate with the people that we have in our group of volunteers, and like I said, I couldn't do without them.
And Nathan, you've done your share of volunteering also, and you've been able to look at the financial side, but also how the work gets done. What's that meant to you?
Well, giving energizes me, and I find that when I give and encourage others to give, there's a effect where we're creating a better world. And it's not about the dollar amount, it's not about the time slot, it's really about the intention. And when you live life with intention and have giving part of that, I find that it's quite energizing. And it also serves as a platform to connect with people who share values, to see the impact of your work, the fruit of your labor. It also is a great way, and I found in our family, where we get together and talk about, with our two daughters, what are things or issues or charities, causes that are important to you, so that we can collectively move forward and help the causes that are important to us.
And that's probably what you hear from clients also, who want to make all the right financial decisions, but it's driven by their heart.
Yeah, completely. And we're here on the planet for a limited time, so let's make the most of it. And we certainly want to make sure that the money, which is a means to an end, it's not the end itself, but the money and the finance side is as aligned as possible to help you accomplish what you want. And applying your efforts, your labor, your financial resources to charitable causes that you believe in will have a multiplying effect. It goes beyond you, but it starts with you and that action that you take to get involved and to contribute.
This question is for either one of you or both of you, but what do you wish those who are supporting charities or wanted to support charities knew about the work or about what it takes to make a difference that you feel like too often they don't already know?
Well, I would say that procrastination is something that we all experience, and we can have good intentions, but until we take that step. So I would want people to know that they can do something today. You don't have to set up a charitable trust to make a difference in a charity. You can pick up the phone, send an email, set up a Zoom meeting, and connect with someone that you know is making a difference, or even collaborate amongst your family, your community, neighborhoods. But it's really about moving beyond any barrier of procrastination and take the step now. That's what I would want people to know.
David, any gaps in understanding that you want to help bridge?
Yeah, I mean, I always like to say, I agree with Nathan, procrastination and I'm going to do it tomorrow, or, I'm thinking about it next week, never gets done. I always like to say with us, we're small enough to listen, but big enough to make a difference in kids' lives on a daily basis. Kids still have access to the needs, the services, the support, even during this pandemic. Of course, nothing happens without funding. So that's why charitable gifts are so critical right now. So, any gift today would literally makes a change for a child by tomorrow.
And just because there's not an event doesn't mean you can't help. I mean, David, I'm sure if somebody called today and said, I'd love to support your event, and you said, well, we're not having one, but you could support a program, that would be a viable conversation that might be able to help everybody.
It'd be an amazing conversation, of course.
And Nathan, if somebody called you and said, hey, what about that event? And you said, well, they're not having an event, but there's all kinds of ways to help. Sounds like that's a good conversation too.
It really is, because if people rely on events to give, which is appreciated, and in their absence, and who knows when events, in-person events will materialize, they may be waiting a while, because we don't know what the world, the new COVID world around fundraising will look like. And a lot of charities are revisiting their plans, like how do we navigate this, and how do we take the next step to engage donors. And it's really important to, I believe, let donors know what's going on with your need. Don't be shy about that. And for individuals who have this interest to say, how can I help? And it's not about waiting for the event. It's assessing what can I do today, and then specifically for the rest of the year. And I'd like to point out, going back to the financial strategy,
yeah,
there's another significant change for people that will affect their consideration of donations, and that's a relief that came by the new tax act called the CARES Act for 2020, that basically people that are required to take money out of retirement accounts because they've reached an age threshold, typically 70 and a half, do not have to do that for 2020. So this relief is a significant benefit to people financially. But they can still contribute money out of their retirement accounts to charities, and that's called a qualified charitable distribution. And you can give up to $100,000 per year per person out of your retirement accounts to do that. And that's typically for people over 70 and a half, and now the age is 72 or beyond. But with the new tax law that says you can contribute and get 100% deduction when you get cash of your adjusted gross income, that means people that as early as age 59 and a half could take money out of retirement accounts, then in turn give the cash to the charity, and there's no tax consequence to them. There's some really unique opportunities. So the main point of my message is to talk to your advisor, talk to your tax professional, talk to your legal counsel as appropriate, and work with professionals that will help you figure out how to act in the most prudent manner.
That's great advice. And I have some more questions, but I want to give an opportunity to those audience members who are joining us live. They have a great opportunity to be able to submit questions. We appreciate those watching after the fact, but you'll have to submit your questions otherwise. But if you use the chat function here in the webinar, you can ask questions of our panelists. Nathan, got one for you while we're waiting for any of those, and that it sounds like the age of a taxpayer is one of the factors on what fits best. And while a lot of those retirement account benefits are for people who have accumulated probably some more wealth, there's still some opportunities for younger people to use some vehicles. How is that going to work for the younger crowd?
Well, the universal deduction that's available for 2020 of $300 per person
Yeah, that's
is
for anybody.
that's for anybody. So if you want to give $10, go do it today. Make that move, and you're going to get the benefit on your tax return. So regardless of your life stage, there's an open door for everyone to get involved. And yes, there's been lots of debate about, well, what's effective, what's not, and that always comes to light when there's tax law changes and who's incented to do what. But that's really not the main point. The main point is to act and to make sure that you're making the most of the resources you have and the very limited time window of opportunities that's available in 2020 to get a financial benefit out of it as well.
And David, you picked Variety to be among the charities that you support personally. Any advice on what to look for in a charity to try to take advantage of some of these things? Or maybe you just know that there's a lot of stuff going on in the world and people need help. What qualities should a charity have that it's worth giving to?
Well, I think it kind of is different for everybody. I think whatever pulls at your heart is kind of where you follow. I think a lot of times, like with Variety particularly, I was a guest of someone at a charity event, loved the program and just kind of dove deep into it. For others, will be, different charities that pull to them that maybe their children are, a part of, or other friends have brought them into. But, I think that for any charity, anyone who's into it is drawn in from their heart. And once you're in it, you want to do the most that you can, and you end up bringing your friends into it. And that's kind of how, being president so far, I brought people in who are like-minded and just really believe in the cause.
David, I have a question for you from an audience member. What specifically is your organization doing to adjust fund development for the coming year due to COVID?
Well, what we're kind of doing right now with the webinar, we're trying to raise funds directly since we have no events coming up and have been postponed to so far 2021. We have a donate page on our website. We have, a volunteer sheet on our website to look and see if, there's something that calls to you that you have the time to do, the time to help. We're still doing the work that we were doing pre-COVID. We're going to do it now, and we're going to figure out a way to do it after. So we're still here, and we're still here for these children, and we're not going anywhere.
Question for the audience from Nathan: is the Relief CARES Act developed specifically for 2020, or are these modifications developed due to the crisis? And a second question: can you receive a $300 deduction for donations on behalf of your children as well?
So the CARES Act put things in place for 2020, and that's really the focus of the passage of the law. So this is the time, this is the year to act. And so, for example, many of these provisions that I mentioned will not be available in 2021 unless there's an extension of the law, which is possible. We've had multiple modifications of the CARES Act over the past few months, so more and more clarity comes to light as time passes. And the other thing is that there's another stimulus bill attempted to be forged in Washington, but that will affect different industries. But my point is that there's always an evolution of things that can happen from a legislation standpoint. So the thing is to really focus on this year, and then but consider what may or may not be in effect next year. One of the things that we are encouraging clients to consider that have these qualified charitable distributions where they're giving out of their retirement accounts is maybe they want to wait until January of 2021 and double up their giving, meaning if they haven't made that charitable distribution now, because there's relief from the required distribution side of these IRAs, take advantage of that relief, give your donations to charity, let's say in January of 2021, because that's giving you tax benefits, and then also consider giving your 2021 planned gift during that time or throughout the year as well. And then as it relates to the children, it's per taxpayer. So it has to be whoever's on the tax return that would benefit from that universal deduction.
Hey, some great answers here. One more question from the audience. David, this is about the food program you referred to earlier, which is known as Variety Feeds Kids in Pontiac, Michigan. The question is, how are children who typically get their weekend meals on Friday at school going to get their food during virtual learning, which is going to be here for we don't know how long. How's it working?
Changes every day, but right now we are planning on packing on Wednesdays, and because of the stagger of the schools, the children are still going to get their food, but it'll be 2 times a week instead of the 1 time a week delivery. So that's how it's set up for right now. And so of course, with it doubling, having to change the 2 separate days, we're going to need more volunteers to hand out food for these children. But we will be there no matter what it takes, and they will get their food, like they did last year. They'll get their food this year as well.
I think this is an example of what we see in the environment around us can be very narrow, because we're all going through this crisis in different ways and we see what's right in front of us. But the work of these charities is going on all around us, whether we're noticing it or not, and it needs to. In our remaining time, David or Nathan, anything else that I didn't ask about or the audience didn't ask about that you think would be helpful to remember going forward so donors and charities can make some good decisions?
Hopefully this conversation is bringing to light the need, and the need is great, and the need evolves. The challenges that are going on at the root system of charitable impact is so important to consider. And I reiterate the message of act now, because there's a limited time, limited space to make an impact. And unfortunately, there will be some charities that may not make it through this crisis. And and they're the ones that we really need to lean into for support in our local communities. And charities will need to pivot. They'll need to be nimble. They'll need to adjust their fundraising plan, like David was talking about, or pivoting to other initiatives. So we encourage people to be aware of that and to realize that we're all in this together. As a firm, we're giving back by offering a complimentary consultation, a conversation, if there's any topic that you need support on around finances. No strings attached. There's a lot of people going through disruption right now. So just listening to one another, sharing resources, problem solving, staying together as a community, that is the most important aspect in my view.
Thanks so much for that, Nathan. David, anything to add?
I would agree on everything Nathan just said, and since we're unable to gather for special events, I would just urge people to just ask how we can help. Make a donation, volunteer somewhere, and invite your friends to do so as well, because together we can make an incredible difference, especially during these times.
David, Nathan, on behalf of our community, I appreciate your leadership. Appreciate what you give. This would have been fun to do over lunch with a live audience. We probably would have told a few jokes. We would have eaten better, that's for sure. But technology brings us together and helps us deliver the message. And thank you to all that have watched us here live, or those who will watch us in the coming weeks, for what we hope was valuable information. Thank you, and please support your favorite charities. They need it right now.